Hey guys, welcome back to another online content with me, Mr. Vítor, and today we're doing something a little different, something that a lot of students have asked me in the past. We're going to be talking about accents. Let's talk about accents and regionality. We're going to be talking about the differences between some places, their accents, and their regionality, okay? It's going to be a little bit longer, but I hope you guys have fun, all right? Let's go on then. Today we'll see words in action, the accents themselves, the factors, the prestige, the prejudice, the regionalisms, and watching for understanding. And last one, talk time. All right, words in action. Let's see what we're going to be talking about in words in action. For words in action, we have a lot of different words. We begin with speech, which is basically the act of saying things, of making sounds with your mouth. This is called speech. Prestige is just as in Portuguese, prestígio, right? You have an idea that someone is better because of some characteristic. Maybe they're famous, right? That's prestige. Correctness is the quality of something being correct, being right. Aesthetic, it's spelled correctly. This is aesthetic. It's spelled with an A, and it means to look good. It's the quality of something that looks good. Among means in the middle of or between. So if I stay in the middle of the classroom, I am among my students, right? So it means in the middle of. Stereotype. I think you guys already know what this is. Stereotype is when you have a negative idea, usually negative idea of a group of people. So say, oh, all the Americans are rich, or all the Asians have, eyes like this. That's a stereotype. Not all people are like that. Prejudice is like in Portuguese, this is a false friend. Prejudice is not prejuízo, it is preconceito, right? So it's the opposite of prestige. It's the idea of someone being negative, being worse than you because of some quality. Traits is a quality, it's a characteristic. Overlap is what we're seeing up there, right? The green area is the overlap, is when one thing is on top of another. That area that is the same for both of them is the overlap. It's an intersection. And colloquialism is an expression, is something that you say that is tied to your region, that only people in your region say. It's colloquial. Moving on to accents. We have here some different expressions, some things that people say in different parts of the United States. Here we can see aya, aya. This is something that people say over in New York and in Washington State. It's very common. It's just a greeting. We have oh my God. That is very New York. People in New York have that open awe. So they say oh my God. Then we have, hey, y'all. Very common in this area of the United States. Hey, y'all would be, hey, you, all. But then they get you and all together, and then they make, hey, y'all. Here, this comes from the Cajun area of the United States. Cajun is a part of the United States that was, it's an ethnicity. It's people that came from France. So they still have some of that French sounds in there. So here, basically what they're saying is go Saints, like go, like the verb to go. But they pronounce it a little funny. It's go Saints, right? So it's a little different. Very good. Then we have remember the Alamo. This is very common in the middle to south United States. It's just an expression because of the War of the Alamo with Mexico. Over here in the west, we have the for sure. For sure is just like for sure, but they pronounce it like this. It's usually when you agree with someone. Today it's gonna rain. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so they say for sure. Then we have you betcha. You betcha, it's also an agreement. If you say, the sky is blue. Yeah, you betcha, right? So I'm agreeing with you. And this here is where it's from an area that I know personally. I was there in the United States, and this is how they pronounce certain things. And that their book was this big. Is what you're saying is that buck, that deer, buck is a deer. It's an animal that has horns. And the buck was this big. It was really big. So we say that deer buck was this big, right? So that's just a way that they pronounce some things. And it's a different in accent. Moving on to some actual information. So accents are regional differences. They are things, they are the way that your speech changes from one region to the other. Everyone has an accent, so you can't say, oh, I don't have an accent, you do, because everyone has an accent. Anyone that speaks a language, you have an accent. And teachers usually don't teach accents in courses. ESL means English as a second language, and that would be me. I am an ESL teacher, and we often don't teach speech or pronunciation of accents, mostly because there are so many. And this is a part of language, of fluency, that usually comes with more study. You can't just talk about it. You need to study more. You need to know more accents. All right. So to begin, we have this guy over here saying that he's showing the difference between you guys and y'all. In the United States, sometimes we're talking to a bunch of people. We say you guys. Some people say y'all. So the factors, what changes your accent? Usually if you're a native, if you are born in the United States or Canada or any other country, or versus being non-native, if you're trying to learn that language. So a Brazilian is going to have a different accent than, say, an African person who comes to Brazil, right? Our accent is going to be different. Same thing if you go to the United States, your accent is going to be different than someone who was born in the United States, right? Age also plays a role. So when you're a kid, it's much easier to learn an accent. Kids usually have, if they are born from parents from another country, they will have a mix of both their parents' accent and the accent from the place they're in. So a child born from Japanese parents in the United States, she'll have a mix of American and Japanese accent. And it changes, your accent changes usually until your early 30s. So 30, 23, 24, right? Your early 20s is where it still changes. After that, your accent pretty much locks in. It doesn't change that much. And there are similarities. If there are similarities between the languages, like say Portuguese and Japanese, right? They have the same sounds. So it's easier for us to have to not have an accent, to have a neutral accent in Japanese than it is in English in the United States. Our accent will be much more pronounced. We will hear our accent more when we speak English. The prestige. What is the prestige? The prestige is what some people perceive as being superior. You hear someone with an idea and they have, you think they have a better accent than you do, mostly because their accent sounds richer. It sounds neutral, when usually that is a trained accent. Usually people who work in the news, who work in the radio, they train that accent, but we grow to think that their accent is better than ours, right? And linguistically, they are all the same. All linguists, all the people that study accents, they agree that all accents are the same. Moving on to stereotyping. It's what happens when you group a bunch of people together and then you think everyone is the same. So like if you say, oh, all Americans eat fast food, or all Brazilians are lazy, right? That's stereotyping. You're just getting a group of people and then you're saying everyone is the same. And that happens with accents. Prejudice, like I said, is preconceito, right? Is when you think someone is something just because of some kind of characteristic. So you see a person with a favela accent and then you think they are something bad just because they have that kind of accent. That's prejudice. And there are no strong norms against accents, right? So people don't, there's no rules like with gender or with race. Like if you have a different accent, people kind of have a bad idea about you and there is no law saying they can't. So it's not as protected as your race, as your gender, even though it's usually tied to those traits, right? Then we have regionalisms. What are regionalisms? If you haven't been paying attention, this guy over here has been changing what he says. It's all different ways of saying the same thing. Like here we have isn't it and in it, which are the American way and the British way of saying the same thing. These are regionalisms, right? It's different ways to say the same thing, usually slangs. So Americans will say shoes, British people will say tennis shoes or sneakers. British people will say sand shoes. Some other people say gym shoes, and it changes depending on where you are. And these regionalisms, they are not the same areas as accents. You can have some overlap. Remember overlap? Some areas have different accents, but the same regionalisms, or vice versa. It can be very different, right? And then now, we're going to be taking a look at this guy right here. His name is Eric Singer, and he is a linguist. He is an accent expert. Let's see what he has to say about different accents, and pay attention to the tips. He's going to give you a lot of cool tips how to determine accents at parties and other places. Let's see.
Hi, my name is Eric Singer. I'm a dialect coach. You may have seen me here before talking about accent performances in movies.
What do Texas accents and South Asian accents have in common? The answer is retroflexion.
So today I'm going to offer you some quick and easy ways to tell one accent apart from another when those two accents are pretty similar in a lot of ways. Can you ask somebody to say a simple phrase to try to tell whether they're from, say, Australia or New Zealand?
I'm originally from Sydney, Australia.
From Philly, PA.
Yorkshire. New Bedford, Massachusetts.
Number one, how to tell an Australian from a New Zealander. We can use the kit vowel. In Australia, there's a realization that is not too far off from my own American accent, for instance, something like an I sound. An Australian might say that something like this.
Myth, myth, myth.
New Zealanders tend to centralize this sound. So instead of the tongue being arched up a little bit towards the front of the mouth, it's relaxed down a little bit towards the middle of the mouth, and you get something closer to a schwa, kut. You can hear that here.
Myth, myth, myth,
myth,
and myth,
myth,
and myth.
So there's one actually very famous phrase that you can use that you could ask somebody at a cocktail party, say, to pronounce, to try to tell whether they're an Australian or a New Zealander if you're not sure. And that phrase would be fish and chips. An Australian might say that something like this.
Fish and chips, fish and chips, fish and chips.
Whereas the New Zealand version might sound more like this.
Fish and chips, fish and chips, fish and chips.
Fish and chips,
Fish and chips,
fish and chips.
fish and chips.
Number two, how to tell somebody from the north of England from somebody from the south of England. Many accents in both places, of course, but the cool thing is you can draw a line straight across England. North of that line, strut words like cup, under, mother, love, son, are going to have a vowel sound something like u, very similar to the vowel sound in foot words like wood, butcher, woman, look. Here is a Northern English person, and you can hear their strut vowel.
Cup, cup, cup.
In the South, there are going to be two different vowels. One is strut and one is foot, and they won't sound the same. Here's a speaker from the South.
Cup, cup, cup.
From the North.
Mother, mother, mother. Some, some, some.
From the South.
Fun, fun, fun.
Some,
Fun,
some.
fun.
So if you meet somebody and you're pretty sure that their accent is from somewhere in England, but you want to know whether it's from the North or from the South, you could ask them to say the following phrase. Did you cut your foot? From the North.
Cut your foot, cut your foot, cut your foot.
From the South.
Cut your foot, cut your foot, cut your foot.
Cut your foot,
Cut your foot,
cut your foot.
cut your foot.
So, of course, there are many different Northern English accents. Two famous ones are Geordie from Newcastle and Brummie from Birmingham. One way that you could potentially tell a Geordie accent from a Brummie accent would be to take the face vowel. A Brummie is going to have a sound that's kind of similar to a London sound. It's a diphthong. It's a vowel sound that starts and ends up E, moves from I, it takes a journey. So if you hear something like this,
Great cakes, great, great, great.
you're dealing with a Brummie. If you hear something that's much more monophthongal, something like this,
Great cakes, great, great, great.
then you're dealing with a Geordie. A phrase could be, David bakes great cakes. You can hear that here.
David bakes great cakes.
David bakes great cakes.
Bakes great cakes.
Bakes great cakes.
Bakes great cakes.
Next up, New York and Boston. Now this one's probably easier to hear and place if you're American, probably less so if you're not an American. The lot vowel is going to be very open, fronted, no lip rounding in a New York accent. Lot, hot, not, God. Here's a New York speaker.
Not, not, not.
It's going to be a little bit lip rounded in a Boston accent, so more like lot, God. Here's a Boston speaker.
Not, not, not,
Not,
not,
not.
not.
So here's a phrase you could ask somebody to say. That's not a lot of pots. If they say it with an ah, that's not a lot of pots. They're probably from New York.
That's not a lot of pots. That's not a lot of pots.
If they say it with an oh, that's not a lot of pots. That's Boston.
That's not a lot of pots. That's not a lot of pots.
That's not a lot of pots.
That's not a lot of pots.
That's not a lot of pots.
That's not a lot of pots.
Next up, New York City and Philadelphia. So both New York City and Philadelphia raise the trap vowel in certain circumstances, so you'll get air instead of ah. They do it in different places. In a New York accent, you get trash and traffic. You also get sad and bad. Here's a New York speaker.
Trash, trash, trash.
Whereas in Philadelphia, those are not some of those trap words that are going to get raised. We're going to get other ones like man and hand. So you'll get something more open like my own, traffic, trash, sad, bad. Here's a Philadelphia speaker on similar words with a different sound.
Traffic, traffic, traffic.
So if you want a quick cocktail party test, you could have somebody say trash or traffic.
Trash, trash,
Traffic, traffic,
trash,
traffic,
trash.
traffic.
That's it for accent party tricks.
So you saw some differences there, right? So you say trash or trash. It can mean a lot of things. Did you guys manage to understand the differences, to hear the difference? There's a lot of different things that we can ask people at a party to say, right? And then for useful expressions, I thought of a bunch of them, and it's just too many to list. I couldn't possibly show all expressions. It's too many to list. A barn burner is something that is a really cool event. It's something really good. Mate is how people in Australia pronounce a mate, which is a friend. Awesome, I say this a lot. Something is awesome. Firefly, which is those insects that glow, vagalume, right? In some places in the United States, people say lightning bug. Pop is how some people say soda. Sub is how some people call a Subway sandwich. Some people call a hoagie. And then there's another. Hella is it's a lot. Wicked is something is really good. You go to a show and that show was wicked. Bubbler, it's a drinking fountain, right? Bebedouro. Oi, this is not Portuguese. This is how some Australians call your attention. They go, oi! Right? So it's very different. There's too many expressions. I can give you guys a list later. Just ask me in our WhatsApp group. All right? Very good. Let's go on then because we're nearing the end here. Talk time real quick. Have you started noticing accents in movies or series? I told you guys about movies before. Try watching a movie. Try to see if you can understand the differences between different accents. Also, when you watch a movie, can you tell if someone is American or if someone is British based only on their accent? And also, would you say you have a strong accent? Do you think you have a strong Brazilian accent? Let's discuss later. All right. Just real quick to review. Today we saw words in action. We talked about our accents, some regionalisms, and we saw a video with Eric Singer in our Watching for Understanding. And then we had talk time. All right, guys, that's it for today. Stay tuned for the instructions from CEBRAC. Please do your homework because it's going to count as attendance. I have some questions about our video with Mr. Singer and about yourself. So please take a look at our exercise. All right, that's it for today. And I will see you guys in our next online content. This is Mr. Vítor signing out. See you next week. Bye-bye.